population is over 7 billion and more than 1 billion people, or around 15% of the world's population, live with some or the other form of disability, 80% of them in developing countries. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, the world has to build an inclusive and just society for everyone, leaving no one behind. Namaskar, hello and welcome to another brand new episode of Perspective on Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha. The world marked the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd of December, the day that aims to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness about the situation of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for an enhanced push towards a more inclusive society and efforts to reduce the barriers faced by people with disabilities. He said, realizing the rights, agency, and leadership of persons with disabilities will advance our common future. Vice President M Venkaiah Naidu spoke of equal opportunities to ensure that persons with disabilities can lead a dignified, safe, and productive life, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi underlined that his government's emphasis remains on equality, accessibility, and, of course, opportunity. On the show today, we will be talking about the efforts and opportunities the world is providing to shape an inclusive future for persons with disabilities, the challenges and barriers that they face, and accelerated steps to reduce inequalities. To discuss all of these aspects, joining me on the program are three eminent personalities. So let me first introduce them to you. With me in the studio is Mr. Rahul Gambhir. He is Secretary, National Association for the Blind. And we have two guests joining us virtually as well. Padma Shri, Arjuna and Khel Ratna awardee, Ms. Deepa Malik. She's the first Indian woman to win a medal at the Paralympics. Welcome, Ms. Malik, on Sansad Television. And we're also joined by Sharad Kumar. He's a para-high jumper and he won a bronze medal at the Tokyo Paralympics. Thank you to all my panelists for joining me on the program today, and I extend a warm welcome to you all on Sansad TV. Deepa Malik and Sharad Kumar, let me first congratulate you both for being the icons of inspiration that you continue to be, and also for bringing immense laurels to the country. In fact, Deepa ji, your story inspires so many across the country today. You, in many ways, are, symbolizing the term truly inspirational. So today, as we speak on this International Day of Persons with Disabilities, I'll not ask you about your journey. All of us have been seeing your interviews. We have been reading about your interviews. But of course, one thing that I would like to know from you is, through your journey over decades, what is the kind of change that you have seen, especially when it comes to awareness and opportunities for persons with disabilities? And these are two important things that this day promotes.
First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. And it is indeed a matter of great pride and joy to share the space with Sharad. You'll be very happy to learn that me and Sharad started our journeys together as athletes. Of course, we are quite apart, but passion-wise, I think it's been the same, and we have got classified in the same classification room in 2009 when we started on our journey to become para-athlete. And he will more than agree with me that in past 15 years, or over a decade that we have been playing, the changes that we have seen is the new India emerging as inclusive India. When Honorable Prime Minister himself speaks at every podium, every forum about inclusion, about disability at the heart of inclusion, and stresses that India has to be Sugamya Bharat. It has to be the true celebration of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is when it is leave no one behind. Yes. And in the same line, the policies have been redefined. I have seen the policies change tremendously. I have seen how mainstream the para sports have become. I have seen how diversity, not just in disability, but even as a woman, I have seen so much of focus by way of policies on women empowerment, so many opportunities that have been created, infrastructure, smart cities, urban development. Everything is now focused to give inclusion and to accommodate and to felicitate every member of the society. So I think this is a huge change that is happening. And I'm very proud that I've not only been part of the change and also a witness to the change.
Okay, but I'll come back to you and discuss. Of course, there are certain challenges that continue to persist for hundreds of others who have not got that kind of support that perhaps you got. So I'll come back to you in just a moment. But coming to you, Sharad, you are also, like, Deepa ji, have been an inspiration for hundreds of youngsters, particularly who were looking for motivation, and they found that motivation in you. But I think, like me, all of our viewers would also like to know, where did you derive your strength from? How did you battle all the odds, the insurmountable odds that I'm sure you also must have faced, and then you climbed to this way of glory? You also brought laurels to the country.
Uh, Firstly, like, it's been a decade for me and Deepa ma'am to be in para sports, and we've seen how it has changed. Where firstly, when I did not want to be part, like, there was an incident where I went to Bangalore for an event, and I did not even participate because I thought I would not fit in there, and the situations were really bad. Like, the game was not organized in the right way and everything. But now, see how we as an athlete are using this platform and proudly saying that we are para athletes and we are doing the nation proud and we are part of the nation building. See, now when we see how we para athletes have come ahead, where there was one point where people are going on their own expenses, and now the government funds you for everything. It's basically they want to show us how important we are and how equal we are and how every individual is a part of nation building. So this is a right message that is being sent out. And initially there was one person who had all the load for sports, particularly Deepa Man, when she won the Rio Games, and she was trying to let the world know or the country know how we para athletes or physically challenged people can make a difference. Now there are 19, 17 of us now who have joined her to spread the message that we are 15% of the people, that we are equally part of the nation building theory. You know, the best part, like most of the countries that are developing now, it is because every individual citizens given the important component, like how they can be part and contribute. And this is where the government of India is putting forward, pitching it most vocally, that even the para athletes or the physically challenged people can be part of, and they can give the minimum things that they have for the system to change the whole country. And that's what I'm seeing now. But see, of course, we as a people, like going a decade back, there was issues. There was a lot of infrastructure problems, but things are changing now where, see, a person on wheelchair would not have the correct accessibilities. A person who's blind would not be able to walk on a pedestrian path because of not having the markings. But this will take a gradual change, and it is happening. So I think from not having things and now to the point where we have come, where we para athletes are being used, or we are using our own platform to spread the awareness, I think is a big ton of improvement already.
Absolutely. So we are marching towards, the slogan, leaving no one behind. Mr. Gambhir, and your organization towards that has been doing exemplary work. I was reading how you're helping the visually impaired become self-reliant. Help us and our viewers understand how you do that, because it's very, very significant, especially when we talk about making those with disabilities, be included in the society, especially when we talk about disability inclusion.
Yes, thank you, Tina. And I'm glad to be sharing the stage with both the Para-Olympians, Sharad and Deepa. And before I start, my heartfelt compliments to both of them for the laurels that they bring to our nation. So, before I proceed to what our organization have been doing to make society more inclusive or persons with disabilities more independent, I would like to say that we are celebrating the Day of Abilities. Let's remove the word "dis" from here. And persons with disabilities has a lot of abilities, and which they bring to the society. So coming back to the National Association for the Blind, Delhi, we are into various projects. We start from the basic elementary education of visually impaired infants, and then we move to providing them the inclusive education. We were the pioneer in providing the inclusive education or the integrated education, which now government has also adopted, and all schools in Delhi specifically adopts the model of inclusive education. So we have been doing this since 90s, in fact late 80s. So starting from the basic education, coming to the school education. Then it comes after education, the thing people look at is the higher education. So we train them with the technology. We have a technology training center at our institution, and we provide them employability training. We make them employable. We make them more able to compete with the society at large and become a productive member in the society. So I'll be sharing more about it as the discussion follows.
One thing that I bounced upon when I was doing my research for this show is the World Economic Forum says while 90% of the companies worldwide prioritize diversity, only 4% consider disability. So when we talk about inclusion and particularly empowering them in terms of employability, how much still remains to be done?
A lot needs to be done. What is being done is really great, but we need to do a lot because there are a lot of dropouts at the school level, and we really need to take people to the higher education. We need to impart training, technical skills, be it IT skills or other skills. So institutions have been, NGOs and the government has been doing a lot in this direction, but still we have to reach to the local areas, to the rural India, where there are a lot of persons with disabilities, and there is endless scope, believe me, for persons with disabilities.
Absolutely. So what are the kind of steps and measures required worldwide? That is something that we'll discuss if we have time on the program. But Deepa ji, coming to the challenges, obviously a lot has been done. There have been changes that you and Sharad pointed out. But what about perception? Globally, what we see is there are differences in perception towards persons with disabilities. You've traveled the world. Have you also noticed that? Do perceptions change with changing borders?
You'll be surprised. It is a universal issue. The amount we talk about inclusion and diversity, I think almost similar or maybe more focus is there on the same topic. So much so that this year at Tokyo Paralympics, the initiative has been taken to launch a 10-year campaign called We the 15. When we people, if you actually take the data, though it doesn't say that, but actually it is 15% of people who are at some time of their life undergo disability. And it can happen to anyone. It can happen by way of road accident. And they say if you read the statistics, the number of people who get disabled in road accidents is more than the Gulf War in a particular given time. So if you do that comparative study, it can happen to anyone at any time. So each one has to think about this subject. Every citizen, whether in India or outside the borders of India, has to globally think about the subject. And go and you study the We the 15 initiative, it speaks about how accessibility and how not just accessibility, even the language, the terminology, because the terminology also has to become a way of life and what kind of words to be used to address a certain set of people in the society. And when I talk about accessibility usually is confused with infrastructure. You know, if there is a ramp or not, if there's tactile tile or not, if there are braille insignias or not. I think accessibility is a larger issue when we talk about mindsets. And accessibility in a mindset, in a thought process is as important as accessibility. So if your minds have accessibility in their thought process, automatically we will be more passionate in delivering our duties as a citizen by creating an inclusive atmosphere, by putting the thought on the table. And at the same time, the third vertical of accessibility is today the world has got digitalized. Like we just heard a co-panelist talk about how they are creating and empowering people to use certain applications so that they get employability. So we can tap on the talent by digitalization accessibility, because are the website accessible enough for everybody in disability to use them? I think hardly. Maybe not even 5% of the websites in India are going to have that A++ category of accessibility.
Yes.
So I think it's a multi dimensional growth and focus that we need to give. And as you asked me, definitely it is not just an issue within India, it's very much a global issue. And that's why there is so much of global campaigns and global talk around diversity, inclusion at the heart of diversity, and disability at the heart of inclusion.
Certainly. Mr. Kambir, let me bring that point across. Technology, of course, has made lives easier for everyone and also for persons with disabilities in many ways. But of course, there is this inequality that Deepa ji mentioned in terms of accessibility. And that remains a very, very huge challenge, even for our government, despite the amount of efforts that have been put in to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel included in the society, in the mainstream, and treat them at par. As long as this inequality persists, it will remain mere talk and no action. So what are the kind of steps required towards this?
So what I'll say is accessibility is a major challenge. So as we know, the technology has empowered all of us like never before. But technology without accessibility doesn't lead anywhere.
Yes.
Now, if you improve the accessibility of, okay, if I talk about in terms of percentage, I will not be able to say that 1 or 2% of our websites or the mobile apps which are coming up these days are accessible. So we really need to improve the accessibility front, and basically the government has recently come up with the ICT standards which are in circulation. But once those standards are there, now the problem is organizations or the developers, they are not aware what needs to be done. So awareness is one of the area where we need to work upon, or the government needs to work upon. Government identified this area, and ICT standards are in place for the developers to come out with the accessible products. So now the problem of accessibility, starts at the basic level. I'll give you one very basic example. At our institution, the books which are available for the students, the books are not available in an accessible format. So only 1 or 2% of the total books which are published are made accessible. And that is only been done by the institutions like National Association for the Blind, Daisy Forum of India, which is an umbrella organization. So they've been producing these accessible books. So accessibility is a challenge since beginning from the elementary school level education. And nowadays in era of digitization, accessibility has really acted as a showstopper, and we really need to work on it to make society more inclusive.
Certainly, I think, and Sharad, I was going through one of your old interviews and where you were saying how the potential of this huge number of people with disabilities worldwide, especially if we talk about India, over 2 crore people in India have one or the other form of disability, and their potential, of course, is not being tapped because of challenges like these, because of inaccessibility, because of creating equal opportunities for them. What would you reckon should be some of these measures to meet these challenges so that everyone feels that there are equal opportunities for every individual?
2 things particularly I would like to mention is, as my fellow athletes also have an issue with, is the equipment that they use is quite expensive, and on that there are certain charges like the GST and all that thing that has to be first removed. And the second one also being is like, I think most of the people who are physically challenged should know the disability law. I think it helps tremendously, because in that we know what are our rights and what are the positions in the system and how do we fit in there correctly. So these 2 things are very vocal, which I think should be made instantly for the people who are physically challenged first, and also the equipment that they're procuring. And also, like, the thing is, see, when we see a change, particularly in sports, I think this will actually act as an echo for everything. Like, first we need to change the mindset. See, what happens is, what I went through in school most of the time was about the bullying, how we people who are physically challenged also have means it's like a taboo. Most of the people start treating you badly. So I think even they need to be educated in the sense that they don't tease us or make us feel. Yes. And us as us who are physically challenged have to first make sure that we just ignore that what others are saying and just move on to what we keep doing. That's my perspective of seeing how things could make a change, a difference.
Okay. Mr. Gambhir, the theme of International Day for Persons with Disabilities this year is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. Has the COVID crisis, worsened the situation, sort of widened the pre-existing inequalities, particularly for persons with disabilities?
Certainly, yes. Certainly, yes.
In what way?
Basically, in the era of COVID, basically everything went online, and as we are discussing, the accessibility was a major challenge of the online services. If I talk about the app which was made mandatory at the time of COVID, or the CoWIN application, initially that also had the accessibility issues. Later on, they were resolved, but these made life very difficult for people who are not tech users, and people who are tech users, for them also it was very difficult. I remember I was in Mumbai when this COVID hit us. So at that time, getting the groceries for persons with disabilities was a challenge, specifically those who are into unstructured service sector, people who don't have the access to the technology, or people who had the access to the technology, they were confronted with the challenge of accessibility. So COVID mobility was a challenge. Mobility was one of the major challenges during the COVID times. So COVID was a very difficult phase for specifically for persons with disabilities, considering the accessibility challenges we have.
Absolutely. Deepa ji,
but if I say that somewhere pandemic has also been a silver lining for the world to understand that work from home is possible. I do a lot of corporate motivational lectures, and I have come across a change in their mindsets where they are now looking at employing people with disability. Of course, visual impairment is a different challenge, but those with just mobility challenge, they say that work, practically the world economy has moved online and from home through these virtual platforms. Even we are now meeting each other through this virtual platform. So it has kind of given a vision to the organizations that yes, people with disability who are qualified are not an hindrance, and they can be employed through this work from home culture if they are highly mobility challenged. So somewhere I think that mindset has changed. Work from home culture has given more opportunities for people with disability to get employed and work from home. So that mind shift has happened in pandemic. At least that is something I have experienced when I interact in corporates and organizations.
Yes, I
okay. So the crisis had some kind of challenges, but also did provide opportunities to some sectors. Sharad, one final word from you on those who are still seeking motivation. Not everyone gets that kind of support that you've got to, walk out, have that courage, muster that courage, and do things that they want to. And this obstacle remains for them. So one word, of course, of inspiration for all of those who are watching us. And secondly, obviously, the real change will be when we will have persons of disabilities in every stream. When we talk about economic, when we talk about political, of course, there are social changes that are happening. So for political changes to happen, what is the kind of vision that you have?
For political change, firstly, is that we should have more of physically challenged people represented in the parliament, for sure.
Of course.
And also the second part would be like, see, for me, it is not that all of a sudden I'm getting all the support that I needed. Of course, we are going back decades back where we didn't have anything, where we also had to put our own money to go for the competitions. Of course, things are not just provided right in the instant for us. It was the fact that we chose and also pursued our passion. We chased it. And this is how we are here. See, of course, we cannot provide everything to 1.3 billion people, all the things that they demand at the very initial stages. Of course, you have to come out of your houses and play first. Then only you get to the situations where someone will help you. That's how you be identified. And that is the first thing, that you get out of the door, your comfort zone, try to be noticed. And it is just not a journey that anybody will come and say, okay, right away, I'm giving you your spike shoes, go and run 100 meters. It's not going to happen like that. You have to tell us or show us that, this is where it starts and we have a potential. That's how it starts for everybody, and we have to take it that way. We cannot. I know we are physically challenged people, but that is the whole idea of it. We are not saying that come and feed it us right on the bed. We are trying to say that we will move out. We will try to show how equal we are, and that's where we'll get our attention.
Absolutely. And as the saying goes, half the will and half the battle is won. So with that very, very motivational message from Sharad, thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program today, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. It was indeed a pleasure having you all on the show and discuss the challenges, the opportunities of that persons with disabilities face in today's world and the kind of efforts that are still required to mainstream persons with disabilities, create equal opportunities for them. Mr. Gambhir, appreciate you joining me in the studio today and discuss your perspective with us and our viewers. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective Today. Thanks very much for your time.